Unit 7 is all about exponents, and as I say in the notes, an exponent is a way of showing that you're multiplying a number or variable or something by itself a bunch of times rather. It's shorthand. So we have pieces to the exponent. We have the base, which is going to be that big number, or it's the variable. It's the base. Look down here, that's the base. Then you have the exponent, which is always written small. So that tells you you are multiplying the base by itself that many times. The base of 3 was multiplied by itself 2 times. And remember, we write numbers in parentheses like this showing multiplication. You do the same thing as you see down here with the x's, with the variables. You do the same thing. Now we want to pay attention to the parentheses. Remember, order of operation rules always apply. So you've got 2 times 3 to the second power. Now, P, parentheses. Is there anything to do inside the parentheses? There isn't, because the 3 is just hanging out by itself. So parentheses done. Exponent. Is there anything to do with the exponent? Yes, the exponent applies to whatever is in the parentheses. So this becomes 2 times 3 times 3. And then order of operations, you do the parentheses first again. So you kind of go back and forth, didn't we? You get 2 times 9 is 18. Another simple rule to remember, and again, this is all written down. Every number and variable has an invisible one as an exponent. There's a sign in the classroom on the bulletin board that says that. If you don't see an exponent, the exponent is 1. And the rule is anything to the first power is itself. I'm going to write this down. Anything to the power of 1 is itself. So you try these 3 problems at the bottom. I want you to stop the notes, you do the math, and then come back and check to see if you're right. All right, 5 squared, or 5 to the second power, equals 5 times 5 equals 25. Not so bad. 3 times 2 to the fourth power is 3 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 3 times 16, which is 48. 2 multiplied by itself 4 times. You get 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. You do not take the base and multiply it by the exponent. It's not 2 times 4, it's 2 times itself. Now that was a problem I saw in Unit 1 for some folks. So pay attention to those. Now, really complicated one. Negative 357 to the first power is negative 357. And again, anything to the power of 1 is itself. So there are some simple rules to remember. Let's go to the next page. Now we're going to add what we're exponents of 0. And it is the easiest rule you'll ever learn. Anything raised to the power of 0 is 1. X to the 0 is 1. It's not 1x, it's 1. 5 to the 0 is 1. Negative 145.78 to the 0 power is 1. So read the big letters. It doesn't matter whether the base is a number or a letter. Anything you raise to the power of 0 is 1. But you do need to pay attention to negative signs and where they are. So you've got negative 7 0 to the 0 power equals 1. Right, because it's -7 raised to the 0 power. But the next example, the negative sign's outside the parentheses. So you apply the 0 power to the 7. The negative sign is like saying -1 times 7 to the 0. And that becomes -1 times 1 is -1. Because the negative sign's outside, it was applied after. All right? Order of operations. Again, I'm going to highlight this because it's really important to remember. Order of operations always applies. The negative sign represents a -1. Okay, let that stick in the brain. Let's do these 4 problems down here. 25 to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So 1. 5 to the 0, -5 to the 0 power. See how there's no parentheses? So this is 1. Now -13 to the 0 power. This negative is outside. This is like saying -1 times 13 to the 0 power. -1 times 1, -1. Okay? If you want to write the steps, that certainly is not a bad idea. Same concept here. This is like saying -1 times -3 to the 0 power. Well, -3 to the 0 is 1. So again, it's -1 times 1, -1. Lots of negatives, and it's easy to trip over yourself with all these negatives. Okay, you're going to learn 2 rules on this page, but they're not complicated rules. Exponents are not complicated if you remember the rules. I teach in steps, and you've heard me go through the steps in graphing, the steps in graphing inequalities, the steps in writing equations. Well, we have rules for exponents. You need to remember the rules. And they are the 0 rule, which you just learned, the power of 1 rule. Here's another one, the product rule of exponents. It says, when you multiply numbers or variables with exponents, if the bases are the same, you can add the exponents. Now remember, the base is the big thing, the exponents are the small. So look over here, we have y to the 2nd power times y to the 3rd power. They are the same bases, so I can add the exponents. It's y to the 2 plus 3, which is y to the 5. Now I'm going to write an example of something that's not going to work, okay? X to the 5 times z to the 2 equals x to the 5 and z to the 2. The bases are not the same. So you cannot add the exponents. You're not going to see that in ALEKS, but I want to make you aware of it. Okay, now let's apply this product rule to numbers, okay? Let's look over here. You've got 2 squared times 2 times 2 to the 3rd power. Well, remember, as we say here, the invisible 1, just because there's no exponent written doesn't mean there isn't one. It's the invisible 1. So look, and we have 2 raised to the 2 plus 1 plus 3 is 2 to the 6th, which is 64. Not 2 times 6, which is 12, but 2 to the 6th power. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 1 more 2. Okay? Last rule you're going to learn today, the quotient rule. Division is the opposite of multiplication, so the quotient rule says if the bases are the same, you subtract the exponents. In the product rule, the bases are the same, you're multiplying the bases, you add the exponents. In the quotient rule, the bases are the same, you're dividing the bases, you subtract the exponents. Here's an example. Again, if the bases are the same, x to the fourth divided by x to the second power is x to the 4 minus 2, which is x squared. That's it. Now here, 3 to the 8th divided by 3 to the 8th ends up being 3 to the 0, which is 1. You're going to see multiple rules being applied. You need to remember all of them. All right, let's try. Again, you stop this, you do them, and then see if you got what I got. So, y to the third power times y is y to the 3 plus 1 equals y to the 4. X to the 4 over x to the 4 is x to the 4 minus 4, x to the 0, which equals 1. 0 rule. And then 2 to the 5th power divided by 2 to the third is 2 to the 5 minus 3 equals 2 to the second power, but you don't leave it there, you finish, and that's 4. Do not leave your numbers hanging. Don't leave them to raise to an exponent. Do the math. All right, that's day 1.